Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our first function focus of 2026. I'm just going to allow everyone to join this session. We had a really good amount of registrations for this amazing session, and then I'll introduce you to our presenters and how the session will flow. So I'll just go through that in a minute or two. So please log in, settle in. Hopefully you can see the screen and can hear me as well. Any issues with audio, try and log off and log back in, and hopefully it should work. Andrea, Andrea, shall we wait one more minute and before we start? Yeah.
Yep,
To
sure.
ensure we give everybody time. I know it's so important to know this process because we don't do this throughout the year, and you do this maybe twice a year. So it's an amazing way to learn how to restart your performance review cycles, how to close the old ones. I'm very excited. It's my favorite area, one of my favorite areas. So it's 2 minutes past to make sure we give enough time to Andrea and Eric. We are recording this session, so if anybody joins later part of the session or hasn't been able to join, we will save the recording as usual through our community pages. You can access it, or Sage University directly. All our function focus are saved on the Sage University platform. Let me introduce you to our lovely Andrea and amazing Eric, both from our solution consulting team, but I call them my gurus, go-to people. So we are very excited they're hosting this session today. Andrea will be running the session. She will pause and go through. We will check if there are any question and answers. I'll shout them out, or if you know the answers in the background, me and some of my team members will respond to you. But relax, enjoy the session. But if you want to log in and try things in your sandbox, feel free to join in. But I will now hand over to lovely Andrea and Eric. Guys, if you want to do a bit of introduction, feel free to do so.
That's fine. Hi everyone. I'm Andrea. I'm implementation consultant at Sage, and my colleague Eric is a technical excellence manager at Sage. The agenda for today is basically to take you first of all through a couple of big changes that have been made to the user interface and self-service for performance reviews and for objectives, and to just show you how to enable that new experience if you haven't already. And then we're going to jump into the performance review cycle. So we're going to take you through from the start of a performance review right through to the end, taking you through various things, giving you some tips and hints and some considerations as we go through, and giving you what we believe to be our best practice about how to manage your performance review cycles. So our welcome message is just that. We're going to show you the new user interface, and then we're going to take you through the performance review cycle. So if we start with the new interface that we have, which gives a different user experience for your objectives and for your performance review in self-service. So the first change that has been made is with objectives. So with our older user interface, when you clicked on objectives, it would take you out into another screen. And the change that has been made will allow a user to log into self-service, click on the objectives, and open their objectives tab within self-service, within that same WX page. And it also gives you this nice tabulated effect for your one-to-one conversations and for feedback if you have that enabled. I've got a screenshot here. I'm going to jump into an org in a minute to show you this in real life. And then we have a change to the performance review user interface, which gives the manager and the employee this nice show supporting information functionality, which when they click on it will allow them to open up a sidebar that will show them the relevant objectives for the performance review cycle and any one-to-one notes, previous reviews and any feedback if that's applicable. So if I just flip over into a real live org and I can show you. So I've logged in as an employee, and if I now go to my performance section, you will see my objectives and you'll see one-to-one conversation and feedback all in this menu here. And if I click into my objectives, you'll see that it hasn't taken me out into that second screen. I'm still within the same screen in self-service, and I can add my objectives here much more simply. And then this nice tabulated setup where I can click through and click into my conversations and my feedback from the same page. And then if we look at the performance review changes in the same way, so if I click into my performance review, so as an employee or as a manager, when I open up an active performance review record, you'll see I have my show supporting information button. And if I click onto that, it will open up this nice sidebar so I can easily access all the relevant performance related information at the same time that I'm completing my performance review. Okay, so let me just then show you how you enable this new experience. So this needs to be done by a system administrator, but in the HR portal, if I go to setup, and then I want to find my install packages, and then we want to find the human capital management package and click on configure. And if we scroll down the page a little bit, here are our new features, and those two new interfaces are here and can be toggled on by clicking the box here. So this is for clicking on that new objective user interface, and the one underneath, when I switch that on, that's for the new performance interface. So tick those two boxes if you want to turn this on, and then save that page at the top. Are there any questions so far on anything that I have shown with regard to that new user interface?
There is one question. Would it be possible to add a setup that would allow us to turn one-to-one notes off in WX?
Not if you're using objectives or feedback. So if you're using the enhanced objectives or the feedback functionality, you need to have the conversation piece enabled. I can see more questions coming up, but I can't read them. So if you can read them out to me, Ruby.
Yeah. So it's the later part of the same question. On top of that, if a manager enters a team member objectives, he can see the private conversation at the bottom of the page. This is confusing for managers as they also have reviews. On top of that, if a manager enters a team member objective, yes, he can see the private conversation at the bottom of the page. So that's between the manager and the... This is confusing for managers as they also have reviews.
I think so. I mean, there's a couple of things to say about the conversation piece. So the first piece is it's private between team member and manager. So that's the way that the conversation is set up. You actually have two items of conversation. So you can, when you open up your objective, you have a conversation that is specific to that objective that you're in. But the conversation functionality does also allow you to have a general conversation between the team member and manager. So typically used for, recording your notes if you're having regular one-to-one meetings between your team member and your manager, then this is a more kind of generic, general place for a team member and a manager to have a conversation.
Thanks, Andrea. The next question.
I was going to say, Ruby, there was a couple in the chat as well. You go through the main questions though first.
That's I think there was only one in the Q&A, and then there's one more. Okay, I'll read the chat once they came first. Is the feedback anonymous?
The feedback can be anonymous. So when you're requesting feedback, so if a manager is requesting feedback on behalf of their team member, they can tick a box that says don't show to the team member, so that it can be anonymous, but the manager would see it, but the team member would not. If a team member is requesting feedback for themselves, then they will be able to see the responses to that feedback.
Thank you, that makes sense. Is there a way of being able to have a different tab section for closed objectives?
So when you look at your objectives, it will show you your current objectives at the top. Now, I don't actually have any closed objectives to show you here, but any closed objectives will be shown underneath. So they will be in different sections. It's not possible with configuration to separate those closed objectives out into another tab. So I'd say if that's a requirement that we think would be worth investigating, then raise that on the community, and that can be something that development can look at in future development phases.
Yeah,
and the closed section is collapsed by default.
Yeah.
Thank you, Eric. That's helpful. I think that's all the questions from Q&A and the chat.
Okie dokie. So then we will get into the performance review cycle now. So the first step of your performance review cycle is that your performance review records need to be created. So if you think from an employee and manager perspective, when they log into self-service and when they look at their performance review, they will have a performance review when it loads up that they can click and edit. Now we need to have those records created in order for them to click and edit and complete the review. So what I'm going to talk through now is the three main methods that we have for creating a performance review record in the system to enable your managers and your employees to run through their performance reviews. So the first method is for HR to create the performance reviews via the bulk performance review functionality. So this means that you will need to create a list view of all of your team members that you want to create the performance review records for. And I've listed some considerations here because Eric and my view is that this is probably the recommended approach to creating those performance review records, because all of your records will be created at the same time. It's controlled by HR as to when that's going to be done. You are able to select between different templates. You are able to override period start and end dates of your performance review. And at this point, you're also able to make and select the button that makes this a manager review only. So this would be our preferred way to start off your performance review cycle. However, there are two other methods that you can use, and they're completely valid methods. So created by manager in self-service, a simple policy setting will allow your managers to create those performance review records directly in self-service. But you are reliant on the managers doing this and creating the reviews for all of their relevant team members. So in terms of this and in terms of thinking through considerations, the created dates of all of your performance review records may be inconsistent, and you are relying on your managers going in and creating those reviews for each of their team members. The managers are able to select the relevant templates, but they are not able to override period start and end dates. So those are going to be defaulted in based on when the performance review is created and what the repeat date is on your policy. And a manager cannot select to make that a manager review only. The third way we have is using the create when due functionality. So this is a way of actually automating the creation of your performance review records. So using the next performance review date on your team member in conjunction with a simple policy setting, which I will show you in a second, there is a batch job that will run that will create the relevant performance review records for you based on a default template on your policy. However, again, in terms of this, you are not able to override periods and start and end dates. So if you needed to update those, it would have to be done with some custom automation, and you cannot select the manager review only. Another consideration here is that you would need to think about how that next performance review date field is populated. So it's a field on the team member. So there's a couple of ways you could think of doing that, either via a list view or by automation, but those are things that you would need to think through. So what I'm going to do now, we are going to demo a full performance review from start to finish, and I am going to start this off by showing you a couple of things about how those methods of creating are done, and then Eric is going to take over and give us a demo of an employee and manager completing the self-review. So I will go through the creation first, and then Ruby will have a look at any questions that we've got on that slide that I've just talked through. So method number one, to use the bulk performance review creation functionality, if you go to your team member tab, what you would want to do is to create yourself a list view of all the employees that you want to create a performance review for. And then you can simply select them all. And this is nice functionality, select them all, and then I can just deselect any that I think I want to skip. And then if you look at your buttons at the top right here, you will see we have bulk performance review. So if I click into this, that will bring me up my start performance review screen. And this is where you can make this a manager review only if you want to. You can select the relevant template that you want to use, and you can, if you choose, override the period start and end dates. And then I click initiate, and that will start the batch running that's going to create my performance review records. So that's method number one. If I now flip through to my policy screen, I'm just going to show you a couple of policy settings that relate to the other two methods that I was talking about. So if we look at our policy, and if we scroll to the performance review section, this new performance review, this is where you can, if you choose, allow a manager to create that performance review record in self-service. So either if you set it to HR, it means that's not available for a manager. Select manager, that means a manager can start that self-review. And then the second piece of third piece of functionality I talked about was creating the performance review when due. If you tick this box and make sure you have a default performance review template specified within your policy, what will happen, if we look at a standard team member, if we look at this date field, the next performance review date, what the system will do on that date, it will create that performance review record for the individual. Okay.
Don't
Ruby,
forget there's a third step to that. On the instilled packets for HCM, there is a setting for fair sale action creation time. You need to set that setting.
Yeah, very good point. So let me just show you that real quick. So if we look at the install pack, click on configure. So as Eric says, either set that with a time, or you can click the run now button and that would kickstart it, but then you've lost your automation there. So you can use a time from here, save your record, and then that will run at that time. Okie dokie. Right. Any questions on any of that, Ruby, before I hand over to Eric?
Yeah, one question we have is it possible to make the enhanced objectives visible for us as admins in WX, just as it was before this new module came, before 2024? We don't want to make us watchers in all the objectives. Did that make sense? I don't know what it looked like before 2024.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if the HR setting works for enhanced objectives. If it doesn't, it should. Just as any other feature should. We may even have an issue already raised against that.
We'll have a check of that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we'll have a takeaway.
Yeah, we'll do that. Thank you.
No problem. Okay, Eric, take it away, please.
All right. So I'm going to be both an employee and a manager this afternoon. My green screen is my employee. My orange screen is my manager. So because we decided to allow the self-review for this review period, I, as the employee, I'm going to go into my actions. I do have 5 actions that I need to prepare for. And if my screen will decide to wake up, well, we'll just go into my performance overview directly. I'm going to come back. There it is. All right. So there's my action to do my own performance review. Again, I am the subject since it is my performance review. This just brings me back to that same page as if I came in through the menu and went to performance overview. It's in draft state. Those are the dates. As Andrea showed, if I forgot what my objectives are this year, I can go ahead and open those up under the supporting information. This is useful, again, because objectives are slightly separate from performance reviews, but a lot of, most organizations, Sage being one of them, your performance reviews are about your objectives. This can remind you what you're supposed to do and how things have gone, and we can go through and put in our performance review. And my action plan. If I had an attachment, I can go ahead and attach that here. Maybe a document that outlines what I thought I would do. I can save it. I can go ahead and reveal it. For the sake of brevity, I'm just going to go ahead and reveal it. If I saved it, I would just have to come back in here and click reveal anyway. So we're going to go ahead and reveal that to my manager. Switching my hat and jumping over to the manager. I want this to finish up first so that when I come into as the manager, I can show you the piece that the manager is going to have. Again, any action events you have set up, those will send out those notifications. So I'm the manager now. Again, just like the employee, the manager has the action to complete the performance overview for employee tester. Goes in, edits the review. Again, same supporting information. Now what this does show is the self-review right there. So and that's why I did the self-review first, because once the employee completes the self-review, that self-review is there in that supporting information, along with the objectives and any other previous one-to-one notes, past reviews. So here's the review from the previous year. And if you had any feedback this period, again, we haven't done any feedback in this trial org. But gives the manager everything they're going to need to know as they're completing running out of ad. There we go. And finally, the exceeds expectations because he's fantastic. Again, just like the employee, I can save this as draft and come back and reveal it later, but I'm just going to go ahead and reveal it to my employee now. If you had any action events, employee gets the email that the manager has completed their review. I would have an action to sign this now. There's the action for me as the employee to sign my review. It's nice about the new UI. It shows me my self-review, my manager's review side by side as I'm going to go through, and I can, if I need to, put in a final comment. You know, why did you rate me like that? I thought I did really well, what have you. And I can now sign this. Again, the employee signs first because the manager is going to go in and sign it afterwards. But if the employee didn't sign it and put in some review comments and reached out to the manager and they had their discussion, that would give them one last chance to kind of reconcile their performance reviews with each other. And there is my action to sign my employee's performance review. You'll notice that there's mine because Andrea opened that a few minutes ago. But I'm signing my employee's performance review, which completes the process for this review. Again, just like the employees saw them side by side, now I, as the manager, get to see them side by side. Before I sign it, again, I could go back and have HR reopen this if I needed to say, hey, this didn't seem right. But I'm going to go ahead and sign this, which completes it. And again, so now I have no more performance reviews, and it will show up under the previous reviews since it's now a completed review. Any questions?
Yes, Eric, we have quite a few questions. Okay, make sure I go in the right order. Let me just load them. Okay, so first method for creation. Is there a way to see unlaunched forms and for which team member? If a form is already created for the same period, for example.
Well, you can't create a performance review for
unless
an employee
they're published.
Well, if you have, let's address this. I'm not sure what you mean by unlaunched forms. If you mean unlaunched forms, do you mean the list of? Let's take this in two ways since you can't answer back. But if you mean the templates, yes. When you are launching the performance review as HR, in the second step, it gives you it will display every single template that is published, so you can pick from which performance review template. If you mean employees who don't have launched performance reviews already, it won't show you that. But if you've already initiated the process for some employees and you do it again, it just won't relaunch. So if I go in,
it will also tell you who it's not going to create for.
Right.
So if you pick the whole list, Derek, you'll be able to see.
So if I come in here, yeah, exactly. I'm gonna do manager tester since his is still open.
If you do him on his own, it won't pull up the templates. If you do the whole list, then it will show you the list at the bottom.
But if I do employee and director and test. Performance. I didn't notice who you picked in your opening sequence, so. But it says. So it's only going to create one for test because director and manager already have a performance review open.
Thanks, Eric. If Selena, if that hasn't answered your question, let us know in the Q&A area. The next question is, are you able to add action events when an objective has been set to notify the manager and employee to approve? Do you want me to repeat that one?
Yeah. If it's that, can you set an action event to, so
it needs approval.
It needs to be approved, so it's being submitted, then yes. Now whether that's standard or not, Eric, you might need to check, but if not, it can be done with a custom action event for sure.
All right.
2 seconds.
Thanks, Andrew. Okay.
See what options you get on as a standard.
Closed.
So I think you're looking at a custom action event, but that's certainly doable.
Yeah, you can see when they're revealed and on the review date itself, but not when it's been submitted initially. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. Next question is, we are monitoring performance completion, but sometimes the reporting is not. Sorry, I've skipped a question. Let me go back to the original. Another question from Jen. I'm so sorry. We found that both the manager and employee are getting timed out at times when completing their self-review. Can this be prevented somehow other than just saving it consistently? I thought it saves automatically.
It should be.
It does save, but so like if I just let this screen sit here, let's assume it's still in the middle, and I entered all my information and I didn't save any new information and I walked away for 10, 15, 20 minutes. Yes, that's a profile setting. I believe it's a profile setting now that I'm thinking about it.
It's feeling familiar, Eric.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the lockout period effectiveness.
So that can be increased.
Yep. I advise you not to use forever, but
definitely not.
Yep.
Okay, Jenny.
Actually, no, I'm sorry. It's the session timeout. Sorry.
Session timeout.
Yeah,
and
session timeout.
It was just under the profile. Okay.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you. Next question is, we are monitoring performance completion, but sometimes the reporting is not clear on revealed, as employee self-review is revealed and manager reveals. Any top tips to help us admins identify who is not completing, etc. for weekly reporting during the cycle?
You have just preempted, I think, my next slide but one, so we'll come on to that.
Okay. Do you have enough time? I'm going through. I'll have one more question, and I'll give you the time to go through the slides.
Yeah.
Any chance for managers to have a comment box when signing? Same as employee.
Yeah, that would need to be raised with development as a product enhancement. Yeah.
Okay. I think Lucy prompted. I have missed a question. Yes, here it is. Is it easy to change process from having it automated to having it triggered by HR?
Yes.
Yeah, just change the policy setting.
Yeah, that's the one you showed in the beginning.
Yeah, just untick the create when due box.
Yep. And undo the time and undo the schedule on the installed package.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. I think there's more questions coming. Carry on, Eric, and then in the next break, I can go through other questions.
Well, I am going to hand it back to Andrew to talk about, because I showed this in the way it's supposed to work. The employee does their part, the manager does their part, the employee signs their part, the manager signs their part, everything's wrapped up in a nice clean bow, good to go, and now we're ready for next year. Yeah. Sometimes managers aren't as responsible as employee tester and manager tester. And Andrea's going to talk to us about what happens when they're not responsible.
Yeah. And this, because I think we all deal with the reality of this, that there will always be some managers and or employees who do not complete the process as expected. So our best practice approach to this is, so whoever raised a question on reporting, 100% generate reports and dashboards. I've got one that I can show you in a minute, and we can talk in a little bit more detail if we get time afterwards as well. But I would say definitely from an HR or system admin perspective is create yourself reports so you can clearly see the status of your performance reviews and you know exactly who has and who hasn't completed their reviews. You can also set up automated reminder emails to managers and employees based on, so you would do this as some customization, but you can set up custom action events that will trigger at certain stages if certain tasks hasn't been done. In addition, you will have the system standard emails going out. So the Action Digest email, if you have those switched on, they should be going out to employees and managers for all of the actions that Eric showed you. So for your editing your review, for signing your review, they should be getting regular reminders. But as Eric said, in the real world, unfortunately, not all employees and managers do not always follow that process as outlined. So what do you do when you are getting to the end of your performance review cycle? Everything should be done. You want to make sure that you are prepared for your mid-year cycle or your next annual review cycle. The critical point here is that you cannot create a new performance review record if you have an incomplete performance review record in place already. So it's very important before you start the next year's cycle or the next review cycle that all of your existing performance review records are completed. So from your system admin point of view, now actually I will go in and I will go out of order on my slide just in terms of showing you a report. So this is the kind of report that I do. So I would create myself a performance review and self-performance review report, and I would group it by the status. So although from a neatness perspective, you want to make sure your self-review and your performance review are closed, the critical record to be closed is your performance review. So if we look as an example, I'll just show you on an individual record. I'll just show you that the performance review record is the record that the manager fills out. And when the revealed date and the signed date are populated, so when the manager has completed those actions, then your status of your performance review is completed. And that is what we're aiming for. When you're doing a manager and an employee review together, there will always be a related self-performance review record to your performance review. And this self-performance review record is the record that the team member is filling out. So what I like to do with my reporting is I like to be able to see the status of the performance review, but I also like to be able to see the status of my self-performance review. What you can also do from a sysadmin perspective, you do have these nice manager action and team member actions on your performance review. So if I pull those fields in, what it will show you is who should be doing what when. So you can see immediately, I've pulled those fields onto my report. I can see really clearly that the manager has an action on this particular review to submit or edit it, and the team member has an action to reveal or edit. So that immediately tells me that the self-review and the performance review haven't been started and haven't been revealed. So I would say build yourself reports from your performance review object, pulling information from your self-performance review, looking at your status, which is basically a text version of your record type, and having a look at these two fields, your manager action and your team member action. A nice thing that you can also do with this manager action and team member action is you can create a WX report on this. So you can actually create a report for your managers to have a look and see who needs to do what on their team's performance review. So that's also another nice thing that you can do. Okay. So if we think about closing off the performance review, so this is our process, or this is the way that you can process closing off performance reviews for those stubborn employees and managers who just haven't done it and won't do it, and you can't make them do it. So 3 different methods, and I'm not going to demo all of this, but I'll show you little bits and pieces on this. But ultimately, your aim is to ensure that you are populating the reveal date and assigned date on both the performance review and self-performance review records. That is going to close off those performance reviews. So you can do that with a data load. So it unfortunately can't be done with the Sage People data loader, but other data loaders are available. So I have put a link here in the slide deck to a page on our community that just gives you a little bit of a breakdown on different data loaders and what they do. But ultimately, this can come down to your personal preference as a sysadmin, what your preferred data loader is, whether it's Salesforce, Apex Data Loader, Data Loader IO, whether you use the data import wizard in your org, or whether you are using an Excel connector. All of those will do the same job. So you basically want to create yourself a CSV file with the relevant records that you're trying to close, and by populating the reveal date and the sign date on those records. What you could also do is you could create yourself a list view. So you would need a tab for performance review and a tab for self-performance review. And if you don't have those already, those can be created. But you would then want to create yourself a list view for all of your performance reviews and self-performance reviews that are not completed. I'm going to show you this because you do need to be careful with your record types. So when you're creating a list view with an object that uses record types such as performance review, when you want to update fields within that list view, you can only do it if your list view is for only one record type. And I'll show you that in a minute, so that will make more sense. And if you've got a very small number of performance reviews to close down, you can go into each record individually and just update the records individually. So those are the 3 ways we would look at kind of how you're going to close those performance reviews down. So if I just bring that to life a little bit, so if we take, for example, Manager Tester, I know has a performance review that we created and that hasn't been completed yet. So if from his team member record, if I go to that relevant performance review, if you were going to update an individual record, you would simply just come in here and populate the revealed date, populate the signed date, and then save the record, and that will complete the performance review. I'm not going to save that because I want to show you this one in the list view, but you would do exactly the same thing on the related self-performance review. So just populate those dates, save the record, and then you can already see now that has changed the status of that self-review to completed. So that's your simplest method if you've got a relatively few records that you need to do. If you have a lot more records to do, then what you can do is to navigate to your tab with your performance reviews. Now, if you look at this list view at the moment, let me just refresh this so we get some more data in. You can see that I've got a number of different statuses on my list view, and I want to click into and update the revealed and signed date, but I can't, and that's because I've got this mixture of record types here. So what I've done is to create myself 2 list views, one for performance reviews in a draft status and one for those in a revealed status. So if I update my list view, now you can see those fields are editable. So all I need to do then is select all the records that I want to update.
Andrea, I'm going to interrupt you for just a second here.
Go for it.
It's critical for our listeners to know that the critical field for your list view here is record type field, not the status field.
Yep, sorry, apologies. You're right. Record type. So your status field is a text of your record type, but what you're really looking to do is to filter this on your record type. So if you look at your record types, you can see all of the record types that are available. We're interested really, unless you've got an approval process, that might be relevant, but we're interested in anything that isn't completed. So in essence, you may have to create yourself 1, 2, 3, 4 different list views to capture all of the different statuses of your performance reviews. So I select my records here, and I just pick my date, and I want to update all of those, and boom, that's populated all of those. And the same thing for my signed date. And then if I save that, now you can see that has closed off that performance review. And you would do exactly the same thing on your self reviews, and exactly the same concept of your record type. So I have got different statuses potentially. So I want to, at the moment, I'm looking for all of my draft. Now, you would also want to be looking at new and revealed, because ultimately you want to make everyone completed. So again, I can select all my records and just apply, and again, apply. Now, what you will notice here, and we're going to come on to this on the next slide, is this is my advice for best practice, having managed this in the real world, is I create myself a field on the self-performance review and performance review object, and I call it closed by system admin. And I like to populate, I create this as a date field, and I populate that as well. So I know for sure, if I'm ever looking back in the past at historical performance reviews, I know which ones were done properly, and I know which ones were closed by a system admin as part of a kind of a cleanup exercise. So that is one of my tips for you guys, is that I would definitely be keeping a track of which ones you have closed manually. You can also do a name and shame report for your managers based on that box. So it's very, very valuable. So then, considerations about what I've just shown. So my number one thing is, although it's not necessary to do the same exercise on the self-performance review object, the performance review is key. I like to keep all of data consistent in the system. So I would be doing this closure exercise on both sets of records, the self-performance review and the performance review records. Bear in mind that the population of that revealed date will make any content visible to team members and managers in self-service. So if you take the example that Eric was showing you earlier in self-service, where a manager may complete a review and just click save draft and close and then walk away and not reveal it to the team member, at that stage, there may be very valid content in there from the manager, but no one can see it but the manager, not HR in the back end, not the team member in the front end. Only sysadmins would have would have that data available to them. As soon as you populate that reveal date field, that reveals it to team member, that makes that data available for HR to see in the back end. So it's just something to consider if you're closing down performance reviews, that you may have content in those reviews that hasn't been discussed between team member and manager, that you are then making that visible to them. Next point is the field that I indicated. So the field that shows which reviews have been closed by administrators for reporting purposes. It's very valuable. Be mindful of any notifications that you've configured other than your standard action event kind of notifications that may be triggered based on revealing or closing a performance review. So if you're doing this, just if you've done anything customized in terms of notifications, just be mindful of that before you go ahead and do your data load. And then when you've been through this exercise, run those reports again to verify that all of your reviews have been properly closed. So again, I like to run my reports and just make sure, if I can get the screen up again, if I look at that performance review closure report, now in theory I should have nothing showing there because I just went through and closed it all. But I can also take that filter out and I can have a nice look at it and see, right, everything's completed. Are all my date fields completed? Have I missed any fields out? Are my self-performance review date fields completed as well as my performance review fields? So I always like to do that at the end. And that is the end of our cycle. So now we are completely opening the floor to questions.
Yes, we have lots of questions.
Oh, good.
So I'll start with first in, first out. Is that the right terminology for questions? Okay, so we received a question. Can the manager send back the form to the employee to edit the form after employee had revealed to the manager?
So you do have policy settings that allow team member and manager to edit after reveal. However, if the manager has also revealed the review, although the manager can still edit the review, the team member can't. So you would, if you had a situation where the team member needed to edit after the manager had revealed, you would need a system admin to go in and to reset the record type on that record to basically set it back to a draft status.
Lovely, thank you.
No worries.
So next question is, are there any plans to make it easier to associate comments to objectives from the HR Manager portal, or when setting up a report, there isn't an association between an object and the comments added to it? I'm not sure I understand.
I understand
the comments are a completely different object from the objectives themselves. There's nothing on the roadmap that I'm aware of specifically to comments and reporting on enhanced objectives.
Yeah, you do have to do a few jumping through hoops to get that set up to give you something sensible, but it is possible to do. So maybe that's something, Eric, that we can look at together and maybe get that out as maybe an article, because we've done some variations on that. So that might be something to look at.
Yeah, that'll be amazing. We have noticed that sometimes when users have lots of comments, it causes WX screen to freeze with a continuous loop. Are there any plans to look into this issue? Abiola, have you raised cases regarding these issues? Shouldn't really time out, because I remember product showcasing the speed and everything has been worked on as well.
Raise that as a case. It's too generic. It's too specific engineer. But
specific.
It's too specific to say what, there's no setting for save better, faster, whatever. So
I think, Abiola, if it happens again, if in those cases your team can raise support cases so we can investigate those individual reasons to what's causing that loop. It shouldn't really happen. There's sufficient is it memory, or I don't know what the right word is. Basically, these issues shouldn't happen. Can you report on one-to-one in conversations to check if one-to-ones are being completed by managers?
Yes, you can, but again, it can be quite convoluted and complicated to do. So that kind of comes under probably the same area that we talked about before with the objective comments. Is maybe we need to put just something clear about a standard way of achieving that.
Okay. Our next question is, will performance review be auto-completed after the due date? Can the performance review still be open and edited afterwards? We have issues. No, sorry.
They don't auto-close, because that's the whole process that Andrea walked us through to close them.
Do you mean performance reviews or objectives, though? Because
it
performance
says
reviews,
PR, so I'm guessing it's performance review.
Yeah, it's. I mean, yes, you can open a performance review again if you want to by system admin going in and changing the record type back to draft. So yes, it can be done, but it's a manual effort to do, and there is no I wouldn't be suggesting automating the closure of performance reviews that, like I've just shown you. That should be a controlled process, because you're revealing information, because you might have notifications. You want to keep that in control of system administration.
I think she has given an example. Sorry to interrupt you, Andrea.
That's
we
right.
have issues internally with managers not completing the performance review before due date. Also, if there's a manager change after the performance review launched, will the new manager perform the performance review for this employee, or will it still be the old manager? Can we temporarily reassign certain employees' performance review to another manager?
So step number 1, so the closing of the performance reviews was what I just went through. So that if they haven't closed it by the due date and you need them to be closed, that's the process that we've just gone through. So that can be done. It should be a system administration task. If you change managers through the performance review, it will go to the new manager. If you want the old manager to complete it, then the best advice I have for that is to set yourself up a temporary cross-reporting relationship to allow that old manager to access the performance review and complete it, and then remove that relationship once that performance review has been done.
Sounds really good. Thank you. We turned our auto reminders off, but can I turn them back on mid-cycle?
Yes. If you're talking Action Digest, yes. And you can switch them on for specific people as well. So there's a tick box on the team member that Eric's going to remind me what it's called. Receive Action Digest, something like that. Something like that. So you can put that into
you can even put that into the personal details WX process and let employees decide whether they want to get the Action Digest or not.
You can. So you can put that down to the individual team member, but you can also turn it on and off within the install pack as well.
Yeah, if nobody wants to do it, yes, you could unschedule it and nobody will ever get it. But if you schedule it, then within that settings, you could decide who gets it and who doesn't.
Brilliant. Okay, 3 more minutes. I'll go through a few more questions. I have used the data visit before to close off the reviews, but the Salesforce ID didn't work. What could be the issue? Shall we?
Yeah, with Salesforce IDs, then Salesforce IDs is basically, if you look at a record, every record within the system has a unique identifier, and it can be either 15 characters or it can be 18 characters long. And what I tend to find when I'm doing data loading that requires a Salesforce ID is all that. So that if I'm looking at this performance review record, for example, there's my Salesforce ID. I prefer to use the 18 character ID, and that will often fix issues that you're having. It is possible to write a formula field on the relevant object that will return the Salesforce 18 character ID for you, that you can pull out in the report and then use in your CSV file. So that's something we can make available.
And another issue could be in the initial report you use to extract the data. If you used a report type that was something like team member with performance reviews and self-reviews, the very first record ID that you might have on that report output might be the team member ID.
Yeah.
And in massaging that CSV file, you may have inadvertently tried to use the team member record ID in lieu of the performance review record ID. So be very careful when you are building that report that you're getting the right ID, record ID for the right object when you say ID. Because again, if you have a report type with 3 objects, you just put in ID, there's going to be ID for 3 different objects, and you need to make sure you get the right one.
Yep, absolutely right.
Thank you, Andrea, Eric. We have quite a few more questions left. What we will do is, everybody, we will review the remaining questions and all the questions that have come through today. Together with Andrea and Eric, we will document these questions and answers and the recording on the community. Just give us a few days to make sure editing is done. All the questions and answers are documented so we can publish it on the community. If any additional questions come to your mind, anything else you want to review, please let our team, as customer success managers, know, And then if we need additional assistance from our lovely experts, we can go to them. But I'm hoping today's session was useful. It was definitely an amazing refresh for me. And thank you so much for participating. Thank you for sending proactive questions. We really enjoyed, and we look forward to seeing you at our next session very soon. Have a lovely afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Andrea. Thanks, Eric.
See you later.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, guys. Bye.